You're listening to English with Monty, the podcast about the English language. Talking about how you can be fluent in English, part 1. Hello there and welcome to English with Monty. We're on to episode number 38. I have that chap who didn't join me last time. What's his name again? Gideon? Is that right?
Yes, it is. And John, listen, before we start, I don't know if your listeners know this expression, but I have a bone to pick with you.
Why is that? What did I do?
Well, should I explain the expression? Maybe you don't know that expression.
I think you should explain the expression. I think that's a good expression.
Expression means that you have a complaint about a person, but you usually say it about somebody who you know well, a friend or something, because you wouldn't have a bone to pick with an enemy. Just someone who you like has done something which may have upset you slightly. And it's the case, John. I have a bone to pick with you.
Blimey, I can't imagine what it would be about.
Because you did a podcast with Ben. That's great. But I listened to the podcast and you said you didn't want to do one with me because I'm, and I quote, all washed up, which is another expression, which perhaps you could explain, which is not a positive one. It means that I'm finished. I'm over the hill.
It does, yeah. Well, the truth is hard to accept sometimes.
Yeah. I thought you were going to apologize, but you're not.
I'll apologize now, maybe, possibly.
Okay.
I'm sorry if you feel offended. I'll do it like a politician. I'm sorry for the fact that you felt offended by the fact that I told you a truth.
Well, I came back.
You came back. I'm glad that you came back. And you wouldn't have come back if you were truly offended, right? You still like me, right?
Yeah, okay, John. Yeah. Let's get on with it.
Let's get on with it. Okay. Right. We're going to do something about fluency today. So the idea is how you can be fluent in English. And I thought this was a rather good topic to do. And I did tell you beforehand, one of the reasons why I've chosen this, or the main reason why I chose this, is because it seemed to get loads of hits on your YouTube channel.
Oh, yes. I made a video about that. That's true. By the way, I should say how to be fluent in any language. I think this was probably these tips that I gave. Hopefully there's general tips about how to improve your language skills. And
I've taken a couple of things. I suppose we're combining it 3 different things, aren't we, really? I've taken something from EF and then Busu, which you seem to know pretty well, and you. Those are my 3 wonderful sources.
Yeah. Yes, I made a video on this subject. And the reason I made a video about how to improve your English, and not because I just felt like it, more than I have at my school lots of negativity
or
really? Speaking to people. Yeah. And they're saying, no, I'm too old to learn English. No, you have to be young. You have to go and live in an English speaking country. You can't learn here. So what's the point really? These things are wrong, by the way, completely wrong. So I thought, well, no, it's not. Why are people saying this? And a lot. So I wanted to tell the truth, which is, first of all, you can learn English at any age or language at any age. In fact, older people often are better because they have life experience or experiences in learning other languages. So they're often better than younger learners.
I think this is one of the great myths, isn't it, about language learning? Of course, we've got to clarify. I mean, I guess if you're a child or a teenager, then you are like a sponge. So you do remember things really easily. So that really helps. But as you said, I think life experience helps. But also, I think a lot of it just comes down to memory. And there's so many old people, whether you can debunk this idea as well, because, you know, you're getting on a bit. It's about how often you use your memory, isn't it? Really? Yeah. Apparently, your memory doesn't deteriorate. The reason why your memory gets worse when you get older is because you don't use your memory so much, apparently.
I should define my terms here, because when I say old, sometimes it's people who are 35 and they say, it's too old to learn a language now. No, it's something for kids. Yeah, I've had that. Then what are you talking about? And I have had students in their 70s and older who continue learning and learn really quickly. So it's a complete myth.
No, it is.
Keeps you active as well. It's another reason for learning a language, keeps your brain active, as you said.
Yes. And I think Laura's father is probably a good example of that. He's excellent. Keeps you young, as you said, and something like that is a way of keeping you engaged with society and also keeping you young, as I said.
Yeah. Can I throw the other myth under the bus
Yeah.
as well, that you have to live in an English-speaking country in order to learn the language fluently? Well, I didn't want to swear on your podcast, Jon. I'll just say nonsense, shall I? It's just absolutely nonsense. Of course, it helps. Of course, it helps if you're interacting daily in an English-speaking country and you're there. Of course, it can help. It doesn't mean that you can't learn English to a high level if you're living abroad. We've got friends in common, Jon, who had never been to an English-speaking country and speak English exceptionally well.
They do. That's very true. And often, in some cases, they speak better than you would expect people who actually spent time in the country, because they don't necessarily pick up some bad habits that you might.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's true.
It is very true. That is extremely true. I think going to the country itself, more than anything, would build your confidence to some extent if you're lacking confidence. I think that that's probably my feeling about going to a country where they do speak.
But even if you go to the country, you still have to do the things that will get your English better. You still need to study a lot and listen and read. You can't just turn up and expect your English to suddenly improve. No, you still have to work at it wherever you are.
Nothing's about osmosis, is it?
No, I've known people who've lived in England for 20 years and they can communicate, but make lots of mistakes. And when you see their written English, terrible, because they've never bothered learning the basics, learn through speaking. And they think that they speak and write really well, but sadly, it's not true, especially when you see the writing. This is all wrong.
And writing is one of those important elements that you need to work on, isn't it?
Exactly. But it depends on what you need to do on a daily basis. If you're doing a manual job and you just want to chat with your friends in the pub, then you don't need it. That's good enough. But if you want something more.
Well, it depends on your aims.
Exactly.
So, when we briefly spoke about this before we came on air, you were talking about some of the ones from EF. So they've got 5 different ones. Some of the ones you're not particularly happy about.
Oh, those links you sent me.
Yeah. They've started off with smile and breathe. That sounds a bit simplistic, doesn't it?
Well, it's okay. You have to smile and breathe. Because if you don't breathe, you die, basically.
Of course.
So do you really need to put it down? You need to breathe?
I wouldn't have thought so. But I suppose it's more about taking a pause, isn't it?
Why is that the number one thing? With the first thing. Okay.
I don't know. Well, maybe it's just about breathing in to get more oxygen in so you feel more confident.
All right. It's not a fucking yoga class, Jon. Sorry. You can edit that out if you want.
That's true. So you don't agree with this one? Okay.
No, yeah, okay. You just smile. Yeah, fair enough.
Memorize examples with vocabulary.
Don't just memorize a list of words. Make sure to include examples. I'm reading here. It's true. You've got to use vocabulary. You learn the vocabulary, but you've got to use it. That's the thing. It's okay to memorize if you actually use it. Yeah. Just memory, you're going to forget it very quickly. Just memorize a list. If you memorize something and then you go out and you use those words in conversation or even in writing, then you'll remember it. Well,
that's the key point though, isn't it? It's got to be a priority, hasn't it, really, in terms of what kind of vocabulary you learn, I would say. There's not really much point in learning things about, I don't know, medicine if you don't really use medical words in your everyday language.
No, exactly.
I mean, I guess that's common sense, though, isn't it?
If you're learning like adjectives to describe yourself, I don't know, sort of confident, witty, aggressive, whatever, you learn these words. It's okay to memorize them, but just make sure that you go out and you use them. Then you'll remember them.
Just repetition. You have to go out and use them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Listen to learn. So the idea is paying close attention to what you hear. So if you're listening to the radio, news, or the movies, and then keep a notebook handy to write down new phrases.
What if you listen while you're jogging to a podcast while you're jogging?
You just jog
slowly. It's difficult to whip out your pencil, if you know what I mean. And
Indeed.
and take notes.
Maybe we should edit that bit out. Well, that's true. Maybe you just need to jog slowly, or I don't know. Maybe can you record things while you're jogging at the same time? That sounds a bit too much effort, doesn't it?
If you're speaking to a native speaker, don't be afraid to ask them to explain any idioms or expressions that you don't understand. That's what I'm quoting here.
I think you should explain exactly what washed up means then.
Didn't I explain that? Washed up. Well, imagine, I think it's like fall in the river. So that's the metaphor. You fall in the river and then you end up getting washed back on the shore. Is it the shore in the river? No. On the river bank. The river bank. You're in a terrible state.
Doesn't it mean that you have died, though? Isn't that what it means?
It could be. Yeah. You think?
I just thought it would be an opportunity to link it in. I wasn't trying to rub salt in the wound.
What's the connection with improving your English? Is it just explaining an idiom?
I don't know. I mean, I suppose idioms and expressions are a good way of being more fluent, aren't they? Because native speakers invariably use them. So therefore, as a non-native speaker, if you do use idioms and expressions, then you will sound more fluent, more like a native speaker.
Okay.
It just seems a bit more natural, apparently. That's probably true, though, isn't it? If you think about how many times we actually use expressions and idioms, we do use them quite a lot, don't we? I think this is something that's often lacking with people trying to learn English. Not many people seem to focus on using idioms.
Possibly, it's true, but there are a lot of them. And also people invent their own as well. They mix the metaphors. It's not so easy. It takes real time.
It does, but I would have said with idioms, though, it's not too bad in the sense that there are quite a few idioms that are quite universal, aren't they? People focusing on universal idioms is probably a good idea. Something that's connected to their language.
Mm-hmm.
You're okay with this one?
I'm not okay with the next one.
Monty is based in London, and we offer individual lessons and conversation group classes in the centre by Tottenham Court Road. Come and join us. You can access the times and place to meet through Meetup at the following web address. So that's meetup.com/Monty-English-conversation. See you there.
Exercise your mouth muscles.
Yeah, what is this? Where do you get this from? ef.com. What is this? Exercise your mouth muscles. English probably use more sounds that you don't have in your first language. Develop your muscles in your mouth by exercising them. What? Is this like more mouth yoga thing? Well, why?
I actually think this is quite a good idea.
You're just going to, sit in front of the mirror and then make contours, your mouth muscles, and put marbles in your mouth and pencil under your tongue and start breathing out, standing on your head, put garlic between your toes, or maybe not the garlic.
I think we should, first of all, tell people not to put marbles in their mouths or put pencils under their tongues just in case they choke. I'm sure there's some kind of safety thing that we shouldn't be telling people to do.
All right. I don't see how this is going to improve your English. I don't see it.
Personally, I do see it. For me, particularly with vowel sounds, is it fair to say French doesn't normally have open vowel sounds, does it? It doesn't have any open vowel sounds. I think doing exercises and trying to repeat the sound like O, O, O. So if you're repeating that over and over, I think that's quite good.
You might get locked up, but
well, I'm not suggesting you do it in the street, but if you did it at home in front of the bathroom mirror.
Yeah, but okay, then if you take this to its logical conclusion, my students come in for today's lesson. And today's lesson, we're going to do some exercise with your mouth muscles. I want everybody to stand up, open their mouth and go, oh, oh. That's it. It's little Javier at the back there. Maria, come on, let's hear you. Oh, no, I'm not going to do that.
Well, you don't have to. I'm just saying I think it might work on some level.
Okay.
It seems ridiculous and it seems a bit crazy, but I think on some level it would help. Because also as well, if you think about when you're speaking a foreign language, so you speak French and you speak a bit of Spanish.
What do you mean a bit?
A lot of Spanish, do you?
Yeah, kind of.
I didn't realize you were that good.
I lived in Spain for a few years. So.
All right. Can you give us a little sentence in Spanish? Just to demonstrate if you did work on your mouth muscles, then it would be better.
¿Dónde está la playa?
Excellent. When you did that, admit it, your mouth didn't seem very natural, did it? Because you were kind of straining your muscles, right?
John, I have no idea what you're talking about.
You must have had this happen where you speak for a long period of time in that language and your mouth is physically tired.
I don't know. I'm scrolling through my Twitter feed now. You made your point, John, but I'm just getting my revenge for you calling me all washed up. So.
I'm never going to live that down, am I? Never mind. As I said, the truth hurts. Copy a native speaker.
Why do you want to copy a native speaker?
I don't know. It's
Why
just
be a
one
native
of
speaker?
the
Why would
things
you want
on
to do
here.
that? Copy people that speak well, whether they be natives or not.
Okay, yes, I think that's good advice.
Because some native speakers say stupid things and don't express themselves very well. Just because they're native speakers doesn't mean that they have a wonderful means of expression.
There are many people that speak with a very good American accent because they've grown up with Sesame Street.
Is that right?
It's true.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. I've met people, European people, invariably, who have perfect American accents because they've grown up with American TV.
Well, I've met someone who spoke like the Swedish chef. Doesn't always work out. Depends on which character in Sesame Street you follow.
That's a good point.
Or the Cookie Monster. Oh, sorry, that's not a very good impression. Cookies. I can't even remember. Talking about pronunciation, there may be, of course, good to have some guide. I don't know. I think copy a native speakers like this is just the only way to improve is to be native. I'm not sure.
I don't think it's the only way, is it? I mean, it's just one element that could work on some level, I suppose.
On some level, yes.
Maybe. But you're more enthused by the other tips.
I don't know.
On Busu, don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Oh, Busu. So this is the other website you sent me,
Hmm.
John, for prepared. We think we don't do any preparation for this podcast. You think we just turn up and chat. But no, John does hours of preparation the day before, don't you, John?
At least 5 minutes. I mean, 5 hours.
This link you sent me, I find this one better, actually, more interesting. First one, I totally agree with. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Yeah, absolutely. It's not just learning English.
That's true. I think that's
You won't improve if you don't make mistakes.
That's definitely the first one you've wholeheartedly approved of. Okay, yes. So it's about you don't need to speak perfect English and your goal is to deliver a message. I always tell this to my students, and I always think, hopefully you agree with this idea, but fluency is not about being perfect, is it? Fluency is about good communication and speaking at the right kind of speed, right?
Absolutely. And I'm guilty of making this mistake myself because, all the time I'm teaching grammar. And then when I'm learning a language, learning French, I hope I speak French now, but not perfect. Even now, I don't like to make grammar mistakes. And it's stupid. Get the words out. I know I don't follow my own advice. Do as I say, not as I do. What's the right conjugation here? Oh, forget it. I'm not going to say anything. Well, that's completely wrong. Sometimes I forget if a word is masculine or feminine. I just order 2 of something, so you don't need to have that problem.
So you end up having 2 cups of coffee instead of 1.
Je voudrais une bière, un bière. I know. Oh, what is it? I don't know. So je voudrais 2 bières. You know that's always going to be right. Especially when I first arrived, just ordered 2 of everything. Coffees, 2 beers, 2 croissants. That's why I'm putting on weight. I ordered 2 croissants, 2 omelettes, 2 pommes de terre, whatever.
That strange English bloke's back again who just sits at the table
with 2 of everything.
With 2 beers. I think you're waiting for a
waiting
date
for my invisible friend. Yeah, we'd stood up. He
stood
orders
up
2 beers
every single time.
His friend doesn't turn up. Yes, no, because I didn't want to make a mistake with the masculine or feminine.
Don't follow that idea.
No. You see how stupid you look if you do that?
Yeah.
Make the mistake and be proud of it.
Anywhere in the native speaking world, people are happy for you to make a mistake. They're not going to look at you like you're a weirdo, right? Most of the time, people understand.
No, you're right. They don't even notice. I notice mistakes. I'm a grammar teacher. I'm always listening to an English teacher. But the vast majority of English speakers, they're listening for your message. They're not listening to the actual conjugations and things. They're just listening to your message. And that's way more important. So.
Again, just communication. And practice. Constantly look for opportunities to test out your spoken English. Yeah. I would agree with that.
A bit obvious, really.
It is a bit obvious.
The more you do, the better you'll get, really. It's about quantity when it comes to learning a language, isn't it?
Very much so. I think putting that on its own is quite a good thing to do. And I know it's obviously similar to the EF one, but I think listen is sometimes an issue for some students, isn't it? Sometimes you have students who can speak very well in terms of effectively communicating, but then if they perhaps listened a bit more, they could refine their language. Do you find that? Like, as in they make consistent mistakes and they obviously speak well and they communicate effectively, but then they don't always listen enough to try and help them refine their own language. Would you say that's fair?
Sorry, what did you say, John? No, I'm joking. I was listening. I was joking. Yes, it's very important to listen. There is a caveat, though, because I've had some students who think that just by watching, I don't know, shows on Netflix, they're going to suddenly one day wake up and be completely fluent in English. It's not as simple as that. It's important to listen, but you need to get involved. You need to check vocabulary and practice speaking as well.
It's talking about as well, learning about how to give your opinions in English with new expressions and idioms. Kind of covered that, didn't we? I think giving your opinions using expressions and idioms can be quite nice. I have a student, a Romanian student, that comes to my conversation group. He hasn't been for a while, actually, but he genuinely used to come up at the beginning of the lesson and actively discuss something very controversial with me. But I figured out after a while, and he actually admitted this, that he was just doing it simply to improve his English, not because he actually had controversial opinions, which I thought was quite interesting. I thought he was a crazy man, but apparently no, he was genuinely trying to improve his English.
I must admit that, and I'm not quite like that when I'm learning a language. And I said, you learn lists and you have to use the list. Otherwise, there's no point. And sometimes there was like an obscure word that I'd learned, but I thought I want to remember this. So I'd have to get it into the conversation somehow. So I would talk about something which is really relevant and use the word and ask a question using that word. Oh, okay. Just for the sake of using it. So yeah, I see the point.
Maybe not be too controversial with your opinions, because otherwise it could be a problem, right? It's good for speaking. Celebrate success.
Celebrate success. What are they saying here? Go to the pub, get drunk, start a fight. What? Every time you learn some new English. What is this? Why is celebrate success? I made that bit up. They didn't quite say that. That's one of the points. That's point number 4, celebrate success.
Is that a bit too new age for you? The idea is it's basically be proud of your progress, right? Maybe give yourself a bit of chocolate after you've done well, or a pat on the back.
You pat yourself on the back.
Apparently that's a good thing to do.
I don't know. It gives me asthma.
Okay. Apparently for some people, that's a very good thing to do. It makes them feel as if they're making progress, feel more accomplished. You don't celebrate success.
I don't know.
Are you never successful, maybe?
You don't need to go out and celebrate. It's just a sort of quite a good feeling when you've done the hard work and then, I don't know, you have a conversation and you successfully get your message across. That's the reward in itself. You don't need to go out and buy a pumpkin latte and dance till dawn just because you had a good conversation.
Maybe that's where you're going wrong in life, perhaps.
I don't know what a pumpkin latte is. I've just seen this people ordering it in places. Do you know what it is? Can you put pumpkin in a latte? I understand.
You can probably order it from Starbucks, right? I've never had it.
I've had people talking about it.
Really? Sounds disgusting.
If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave me a donation online via our website. Monty is a small independent company and I do all the editing myself. I would suggest £2.50 to buy me a coffee or £5 for a beer. montyenglish.co.uk. Then just click on the podcast button at the top. You can donate here. Thank you. I appreciate it.